I'll just share my screen in a bit. So just confirm that you're able to see my screen. So just give me a moment. Yeah, I'm sharing my screen. Just let me know once you're able to see that.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so good morning and hello to everybody who is joining in this webinar. So, and thanks to Puneet, Swapna, and Tech Writers Tribe for inviting me. So, yeah, so this is a bit of a confusing topic for some people because technical writer and technology writer, these terms we use pretty interchangeably in our day-to-day conversation. So I will try to demystify it for all of you. And over the next 30, 45 minutes, we'll try to look at some of the deeper aspects of the roles and responsibilities of a technical writer compared to technology writer in terms of, whether you are uh, trying to build your career or you're looking to build your own personal brand. So what it entails to think like a technology writer, which is beyond technical writer. So this will hopefully seed some thoughts in your mind in terms of how to kind of get a progression in your career, right? If you're already a technical writer. So I'm sure many of you would have made a career in terms of technical writer, but what's beyond and what are the certain allied fields where you can take a leap. So Puneet, can we have the poll, please?
Yes, Shyam. I'll just need 1 minute for that.
Yeah. So while Puneet is coming up with the poll, so here's the agenda for today. So we have these broadly four topics. So first, we'll try to kind of demystify what is the difference between technical and technology writing, and then followed by the career opportunities in terms of technical and technology writing. And then, of course, from a personal development point of view, what you need to do for upskilling yourself as a technology writer, and then followed by how do you promote yourself, either even if you're looking for a job or you're looking for building your own personal brand or an influencer in a technology space. So what you need to do. So these are the four topics, and then um, feel free to ask your questions. We can take a mid-session break maybe after the second topic, where I can open up the window for, let's say, 2-3 minutes. If you have any relevant questions, you can ask it. And my only request would be to keep your questions relevant to what is being covered. Whereas if you have some more detailed questions, you can keep it for the end, a Q&A, where we will devote at least 15-20 minutes for the more detailed Q&A. So this is how we would structure this session. So hopefully that should be fine with all the audience. So now let's wait for the poll to come up.
Please go ahead and vote. I hope it's visible. Poll.
Yeah, I think we're seeing some responses coming in. So let's wait for like 30 seconds.
Everyone try to answer that quickly so that we can move on.
Okay, I think nearly 50% people have responded to the poll. So good. I think, yeah, so deeper technology content, cross-functional content, work on more strategic initiatives around content, and also becoming a tech influencer. So looks like most people are interested in creating more deeper technology content, whereas cross-functional content and strategic uh, initiatives around content, there are few people who are interested. So good. I think that's I mean, I get a good sense of it. So yeah, thanks everyone for taking part in the poll. So let me just reshare my screen and we'll just get started. And if you have any questions, you can put it on the chat. So we will kind of look at it after we cover the second topic. So yeah, so let's get started. Yeah, just checking one last time if my screen is visible, right? Puneet and Swapna.
Yes, it is visible.
Okay, great. Okay. Yeah, so what is technical writing and technology writing? So, again, as I said in the beginning, these words are used pretty interchangeably, and sometimes it leads to a confusion. But in terms of roles and responsibilities, there are some differences. Some are very subtle differences, and there are some larger differences, which you will understand as we progress in this session. So yeah, so this is like a general definition, right? So wherein technical writing is more about creating documentations, manuals, for the product, and it helps the product users to perform a specific task. Mostly it is related to the product's functioning and its usage, right? Whereas in technology writing, we are looking at a bit of a wider scope, wherein we are trying to educate the users in terms of the products and its possibilities, customizations, and also we are taking a more wider scope at the technology underlying the product, right? Now, what it exactly means, I'll give you some specific examples in the subsequent slides so that you really understand what it is. And well, depending upon what you're searching for, let's say you're searching for a job on technology writing on LinkedIn, you may come across some similar terms. So many companies call it as a tech content writer or technical blog writer, and things like that, right? So depending upon which platform you are searching in and what you're searching for, you will have to optimize the keywords a bit. But typically, the word technology and content would be interspersed here and there, right? Which will give you the sense that yes, it is much beyond than basic technical writing. In some cases, some tech companies, they simply call it as a content writer because they know that they're a tech company. They don't want to add the word tech in the role. They just simply say content writer. In some cases, they also say content developer. So there are some differences which you'll have to optimize depending upon which platform you are searching for. So if we look at it a little more objectively, so technical writing is task focused. It has a narrow audience. It is more centered around steps, procedures, and it's like an instructional design sort of a format. And it is more centered towards the product capability or the feature capabilities and how to use that. Right? Whereas technology writing has a larger canvas, basically. It is more goal focused. It's a larger goal. It is a wider audience, and the audience goes beyond the users of the product, right? And it also focuses more on the customizations and the use cases. How the product can possibly be used in different contexts, in different scenarios, and also gets deeper into the nuances of the technology, right? So it has a wider canvas actually compared to technical writing. Now, to understand it even more objectively, I have a graphic here which will hopefully help you understand the difference in a true objective manner. So, so here we have a quadrant view, where you have a horizontal and a vertical line. So the vertical line depicts the depth of the subject matter. So as a content writer, when you're writing about some technology, you start with the what. What is it? Like, what is AI? What is artificial intelligence? What is cloud and all that? So that is at a high level. But then you get into the what's and the when, where, why, and then you get to the how, right? How AI works, or how a certain technology works. So that really gets into the depth of it. So the vertical split represents this depth, and this horizontal line represents the audience, the breadth of the audience. So on the left hand side, on the right hand side, you have a more individualistic task focused audience, and on the left hand side you have a community which is like a wider audience. There could be techies, non-techies, business people, technical people, and all that stuff, all that different personas basically. So if you look at a typical 4-quadrant view, so the top right quadrant is about building content which enables your users to perform a task. So that's where we talk about user manuals, procedural guides, knowledge guides, feature briefs, or quick start guides. Sometimes some companies call it. The second quadrant, which is the top left quadrant, is about positioning, wherein you build content to position your company or a product, right? So that's where insights and thought leaderships play a wide, very, very important role. And then on the bottom side, the third quadrant, which is the bottom left, they're talking about creating a differentiation. So how do you create content which differentiates your product or a service or your company? So that's where you do market research, competitive research and analysis. And similarly, on the bottom right quadrant, you have enlightenment. So this is where you are enlightening your reader to use your product or service or technology by creating deep dive, proof of concepts and demonstrations. Right. So this is how typically you would split the various objectives of your content. Now, if you look from a role of a technical writing and a technology writing, the technical writing would be mostly a technical writer would be mostly focused on the top right quadrant, where he'll be building content for enablement of the users in using his product. So that's where, as a technical writer, you would spend a lot of time, working on documentation, working on user guides, manuals, instructions. Whereas a technology writer, as I mentioned earlier, has a much wider canvas, and as part of that, depending upon your requirements, you would be either working on thought leadership, or you could be working on market research, or even you could be working on some deep dives or very detailed demonstrations of your product or your technology platform, whichever you're working on, right? So this sort of gives you a sense of the overall scope in which a technical writer or a technology writer works, in terms of the subject matter depth and the breadth of the audience that you are trying to cover, the reader basically who's reading your content. Right. So now let's get into the career options. Yeah. So as a technical writer, I mean, obviously you have a ladder. I mean, if you're working in a company, so there is a corporate ladder, as we all know. So obviously you would start with a content creator, and later on you would become an editor, and there are some inherent progressions that you have in your career. For a content writer, a typical progression would be to become an editor and then manage a set of editing teams and all that. But apart from that, you could also be involved in information management, like information architecture, managing the docs, knowledge bases, and the various content assets that you use for distributing, decimating the content across your audience. And then you could also be involved in the actual tooling and the processes involved in running the complete documentation function for your product or for your company, right? So typically what I have seen in smaller companies, you have a product team, the documentation is part of the product team itself, documentation team. Whereas in the larger companies, there is a separate documentation division, which is maintaining the documentation for multiple products. So in that case, you would have a separate team, and then you could be part of managing the whole content production, or you could be part of managing the processes and the tools. So this is what broadly the various avenues available for a technical writer within a typical corporate ladder. But then if you look at technology writing, then as I keep saying, it has a larger canvas, and then that actually depends on which domain you're interested in, right? So your opportunities actually open up, because so let's say you have a marketer's bent of mind, then you're interested in marketing. So you could actually build short and long form blog content across multiple funnel stages. You could be an analyst. You could be having an analyst bent of mind, in which you, in that case, you could be writing, white papers and research reports covering market research, trends, competitor research. If you have a sales bent of mind, so you could be building case studies, solution briefs, product specs. And then there is this new domain around software development and software developer documentation, wherein if you have some exposure in programming languages or some programming platforms, then you could be actually building tutorials and demonstrations, proof of concepts around that particular developer platform, and building some unique content around it. Right? And similarly, if you have an academic bent of mind, then you could be writing research papers, grant papers, patent. There are a lot of patent copywriters are also there who work on drafting the patent copy. So as you can see, um, depending upon your interest and passion, you can actually pick up different domains, either be it marketing or sales or analyst or software development, and you can hone your skills as a technology writer, right, which gives you a much larger avenue in terms of either a career growth or in terms of building your own personal brand, right? So I mean, again, from the point of view of the poll that I put up in the beginning, right? You could be creating more deeper content in terms of developer, or you could be creating more cross-functional content across marketing and sales or business development, right? So your avenues are just going up. So this is what it entails to be a technology writer. So before we move ahead, we will just take probably a 2-minute break, and let's see if we have any questions on the chat.
Shyam, we have 2 questions.
Yeah, sure.
Chat. So the first question is, can we say technology writing is before users buy a product? Technical writing is after users buy a product.
Yeah, so if you are looking at it from a product marketing point of view, when, as I said, technology writer means different things in different contexts, as I just explained. So from a product marketing point of view, you're correct. Technology writing is all about building the awareness about the product, building the buzz around the product, guiding the user to take the decision, through that marketing funnel to eventually invest or buy the product, right? So that comes before buying the product. And technical writing comes after the user buys the product. That's true in terms of marketing the product.
Okay, so the another question is, can we say proposal writing is a kind of technology writing? Rajeshri is asking this question.
Yeah, so actually proposal writing is, again, whether it is a business proposal. So again, it depends on the situation. If you're talking about proposal to a business RFI or something like that, then it may not be, right? But in some cases, you're writing proposals for, getting grants from universities for a research project, right? So that also happens. So depending upon the context, it may be, it may not. So there's a business context to it, and there's a technical context to it. So business context focusing on the market and the TAM and all these other parameters which are nowhere related to the technology. But if you're writing a proposal to seek a grant for a research project, then yes, in that case, you could say it is a technology writing. I think that's all we have, right?
Yes. Thanks, Shyam.
Okay. So let's move on. Yeah, so let's move on then, and let the questions keep coming in. So we will address them at the end of the Q&A session. So now it comes to the upskilling part of it. So how do you basically build your skills as a technology writer? I mean, assuming that you're already a technical writer or you're passionate about tech stuff, and maybe you write something about tech once in a while. But then if you want to kind of hone up your skills to become a professional technology writer, then what it entails. So there are many aspects of it, because the canvas is wider. The scope of upskilling is also a bit wider. It is not very narrow like a technical writer. So I'm sure all of you guys have heard about these terms, right? Copywriting, creative writing. So copywriting is all about nudging the reader to take an action, right? Typically, it's used in marketing. You have these flyers and ads and all that stuff. That's basically copywriting. And then creative writing is all about bringing in multiple ways of depicting in terms of prose and poetry, emotions, humor, and all the other ways of combining your writing in such a way that you build a lasting impression on the reader's mind. And that's not an easy thing to do. And definitely in technical topics, you should not overdo it. For example, if you're writing fiction, then humor plays a very important role. But in technical writing, you just can't use humor all the time. I mean, it is a double-edged sword, right? So, but then there are many ways in which you can do that and combine the various ways of presenting your thoughts in terms of emotions and powerful words, quotes, you know, to convey a message which basically builds a lasting impression on the reader's mind. That is what it is. And then, of course, when you're talking about technology writing, sometimes you have to create a story, because technology is, every technology at some point of time it is a myth, and then it becomes a reality, right? So today we have computers and mobile phones and internet, but 40 years back, all this was a myth, right? So when you're writing about technology and we are trying to create an impression about the future possibilities of the technology, obviously storytelling is a way to depict it. Otherwise, you will not be able to, send across the right message, and the reader would not be interested. And similarly, there is also a presentation aspect of it, because you're looking at illustrations, more detailed illustrations. In some cases, we use infographics. And of course, we all also intersperse, these days we intersperse with audio, visual, YouTube videos. Sometimes we use memes also and things like that. So there's a combination of multiple formats to deliver the message. It's not about just writing something, right? So so these are and then you have, I mean, if you look up on the internet, you have courses on copywriting, creative writing. You can look it up, but then how do you do that in the context of technology and for explaining a complex technical topic is what is the challenge here, right? And to surmount that challenge, just by being a copywriter or a creative writer won't help, right? You really need to understand technology, and you need to have some innate talent in terms of figuring it out what is a certain technology is and how to meander through its complexity and then depict it to the user in the form of your writing. So there are few innate talent skills that you need to have. One, of course, is curiosity, and this is something we all know, that curiosity is the best teacher. So I have a small depiction here on the slide. So you have a computer. So as a technical writer, you'd be looking at a computer and you'd be looking at writing the instruction manual for how to use the computer. Press on the start button, the screen will appear, and then type your username, log in, click on the start button, and stuff like that. But then as a technology writer, you have to be more curious. You have to go underneath what is inside a computer. What is a CPU? What is a RAM? Then inside the CPU, what do we have? And depending upon your curiosity, you can go all the way down to the transistor and the semiconductor level. But of course, that becomes a bit too much, and it depends on in what context you're writing. But then as a technology writer, you would be more focusing on the possibilities of a computer, how I can customize it, how I can add more peripherals, how I can increase the clock speed and stuff like that, so that I can customize my computing hardware to perform different functions for different use cases. right? That is what is technology writing is. Whereas as a technical writer, you are just scratching the surface in terms of talking about, the product and how to use it in a limited way, right? So this is also known as, the multiple layers of abstraction. Right? You are looking at one layer of abstraction, and then you can go down a level of abstraction and get to the details. And you could also go up a few levels of abstraction. So, for example, rather than looking at a computer, you go one abstraction level up and talk about the computing technology as a whole, right? How the computers have evolved over the course of last 40, 50 years. So that brings us to our next thing, which is every technology has to go through an evolutionary cycle, and during that evolution, their internal architecture also changes, right? So that's why you really need to understand how a technology has evolved and how its internal architecture has evolved over the past, let's say, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Again, if you look at computers, we had once upon a time we had mainframes, which had different kinds of processors, different kinds of storage devices. Today we have, desktop and laptops, and then we also have mobile phones. And what you could do with mobile phones today, you possibly couldn't do with mainframes back in the day. So what has actually gone underneath to make that progression from a mainframe to a mobile phone, right? So you really need to understand, again, this tracking the evolution of a technology is goes side by side with your curiosity. So just like in case of curiosity, you need to go underneath the product or the platform to see how the technology works. You also need to take a horizontal swipe at how the technology evolved back from the 1950s or the 60s and all that. Right? And by this evolution, I don't mean to say that, let's say you want to understand about mobile technology, you go to Wikipedia and then you see one paragraph on 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, and 5G, and you say, "Hey, I understand the entire evolution of mobile technology." So that's not going to make the cut. You really need to understand much deeper in terms of, each technological revolution, how it, what were its shortcomings, how were it resolved in the subsequent technology. And in terms of mobile technology, that's how we reached from 4G to 5G today, right? And same thing is applicable for every technology. The computers have also gone through some generational changes, and same thing applies to AI, and same thing applies to any other emerging technology that we see today. And third and the foremost thing in terms of your self upskilling is obviously the perspective, and this is something which I feel is a bit hard to do as a technical writer, because as a technical writer, your audience is very narrow. Your audience is just the user of the product. Whereas as a technology writer, your audience is much wider, as I explained earlier. So you have decision makers involved in evaluating the technology. There are users, the actual users who is using the technology in the form of a productized product. And then there are, designers who are designing the whole experience for how to commercialize the technology in terms of a mainstream application, right? So again, depending upon which domain of writing, of technology writing, and what kind of audience you are addressing, you will have to change your perspective to suit that audience, right? And sometimes you have to cover multiple perspectives in the same piece of content, which becomes even harder, right? So again, that's where your skills in creative writing, copywriting, and portraying everything together in a form of a nice presentation or a storyline really becomes really important in this. This is something similar to if you have done a course in photography, right? So sometimes in photography we say there's a point of view. You are shooting a subject with your camera, but sometimes to give it a larger than life image, you actually bend down to the ground right at the edge of the subject and then point your camera upward so that you can take a picture of the subject where the subject looks much bigger, right? With the sky as a backdrop. So you are showing the subject in a larger than life image, whereas in a regular photo shoot, you are just horizontally focusing on the subject. So similarly, while uh, while writing content around technology, you need to have a different point of view, which is focused on the different kinds of the user persona. right? And that takes a bit of a practice to get there. Initially it may not be possible, but then you can look up others' writings, how people are writing, and how companies are writing for blogs and all that, so you can learn from it. So that's what brings us to the last uh, thing, which is how do you take this leap from technical writing to technology writing. So over here, you have to understand that within the company's hierarchy, it becomes a little difficult, right? Because as a technical writer, you're part of a product team or a documentation team, and in some cases, the documentation is actually part of a support team, the product support team. Whereas as a technology writer, you might be working on, if you're building marketing content, then you'll be working on the marketing function or the sales function, business development function, and these functions are totally different from the product or the documentation. So within a company, it's not possible to just shift from one function to other function. Obviously, they would have some requirements in terms of having a knowledge of marketing, the marketing processes, and all that. I mean, again, some companies may allow this to happen. They might be more forthcoming in terms of internal job postings and let people switch like this. But in most cases, it won't happen. And in your day-to-day work, you'll be more, involved in the day-to-day work, and you possibly not have the time to upskill yourself, to become a marketing writer or understand the sales process of that. So, depending upon what environment you're working on, it can be a bit easy. It can be harder. Most of the times, it is harder. So you need a leap, so to speak, right? So that's where you have to take some efforts for yourself, right, in terms of uh, uh, elevating yourself as a technology writer. And then obviously the first thing is to pick your niche. So you have, uh, in terms of technology, there are so many emerging technologies out there. You have AI, you have Web3, you have blockchain, you have quantum computing, which is coming up in the next few years. And similarly, what kind of writing you want to take up? Like, do you want to create a marketing content, or do you want to create knowledge-based content or educative content, or do you want to offer your own perspective, right? So you need to pick your niche, because that's what defines you eventually once you become a known face in the technology fraternity. And then you got to build your own portfolio, be it your own blog site or be it on LinkedIn or any other social media which gives you a good enough exposure. And then obviously you need to look for collaboration. Guest posting is possibly a good option for you to try initially. Also contributing to open source projects, building documentation or tutorials for open source projects. That also gives you another avenue to kind of build your skills and project it in your portfolio. And these suggestions are not um, specific to technology writing. This is for any content, and anybody who wants to get into content writing must have to do these things. So this is not specific to technology writing, but then you obviously got to know what is your passion in terms of technology, right? Because if you're not passionate about technology, then you will never be curious. And obviously, if you're not curious enough, then the content that you would produce would not make a difference for the reader. It will not add value to the reader, right? So how do you add value to the reader? That is most important. And for that, you have to remember this small framework that we call it as a EAT framework: expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. The expertise is, if you are a practitioner of the technology, you can become an expert. Even if you are not a practitioner of the technology, you can be curious really to go beneath the layer and build your expertise over a period of time. So similarly, so curiosity is actually directly related to expertise. More curious you are, the more expertise you gain. And similarly, tracking the evolutionary stages of a technology is related to authoritativeness. Okay? So when you are able to understand how a technology has evolved over the course of few decades, you build authority in terms of that subject matter. And similarly, when you're able to offer multiple perspectives to your reader, you build trust with your reader, right? So those three concepts of curiosity, tracking the evolution, and offering multiple perspectives, those three are directly aligned with the concept of expertise, authoritativeness, and trustworthiness. And it takes probably a couple of years for you to build that level where your expertise and authoritativeness and trustworthiness has reached certain level where the readers would start valuing it. So it is a journey. It is like a marathon, right? It doesn't happen overnight, and neither does it happen over a month nor over a year. It takes a couple of years because you have to build expertise about a technology, about the subject matter, and then write about it, and then garner attention from the readers, right? So that's how you build your own brand. If you're looking for some inspiration on technology writing, so I have these three recommendations. So DigitalOcean is one company which I believe builds some great education content around cloud computing and cloud hosting. You can check out their blog. And then you also have this company called Twilio, which is a communication platform. They have APIs and software development libraries, and they also talk about communication technologies in general, right? And then if you're interested in AI, or if you're interested in software and developer writing, then you can check out Hugging Face, which is an AI, which is an assortment of AI tools and platforms. They also have a very what do you call active blog where they publish a lot of small code snippets around how to perform certain tasks using AI libraries and all that. So if you are interested in developer writing, then you must definitely check this out, the Hugging Face. And finally, in terms of the overall scope for technology writers, so this is some data that I have from Crunchbase. There are over 50,000 AI companies across the world. If you look at data and analytics companies, there are so many data analytics platforms these days. Everybody talks about data, big data and all that stuff, which is a very important technology. So there are 135K plus companies, and then if you're looking at general IT and internet category, you have close to a million companies, right? So all these companies would need a technology writer, yeah, because so you have to also understand that as a technology writer, you're looking at a platform and its possibilities and customization. You're not looking at it as a simple product which lets you to do these 3-4 steps to perform a task. And then I have not included so many other companies who are working on, let's say, hardware, IoT, blockchain, Web3, and so there are. If you combine all these things, then you could possibly have at least 4 or 5 million tech companies across the world, where they would need a technology writer across these various domains. Be it marketing, or be it sales, or be it on development side. So the potential is very, very huge. And if you look up on LinkedIn or any other job site, you would possibly come up with many of these job roles where you could possibly try your luck. But then of course uh, you need to have those skills, as I mentioned earlier, and you need to have some kind of a portfolio to showcase your skills. So that is important, and that takes some time to build. That brings us to the end of this session. And I think Puneet, you can put up one more poll that we have.
Hello, are we open for questions, Shyam?
Yes. Yeah, Puneet. Can we put up that poll,
Poll.
the last poll?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So while Puneet is putting up the polls, let me have a look at the questions again. So we have few other questions. So there's a question from Maheshwari. Recently saw a posting related to pursuit
Yeah, I'll
writing.
just
Any
read it
idea
out.
what is?
I will read it out for
Yeah.
you. Sorry.
Okay. Sure.
And by the way, This question is on, so people you can wait. Okay. So here are some questions. So let's take it one by one. So Maheshwari's question is recently saw a posting related to pursuit writing. Any idea what is pursuit writing? Is it any different from technical writing?
Yeah, I'm sorry, even I'm not aware of that.
Yeah.
So
Maheshwari, would you like to
probably we'll
say
have to
what is
skip it.
pursuit writing in case
In
if you're
what
there?
context you came across this term? If you can explain that, then possibly I can possibly explain.
Maheshwari, you are on mute in case you are trying to speak. Or else we will move on, and when she is online, we will take this up again. Okay, so next question is from Bharti. I'm interested in UX writing. How does it vary from technical writing? That doesn't fall in the purview of this event. We can discuss it in the group, Bharti, if you're part of any of the groups. Mahi Polisetti, are there any guidelines for technology writing? For example, we have MSTP for technical writing. Shyam, that's the question.
Yeah, so as I keep saying, it is a much wider canvas, and it is more like a creative pursuit, right? Where you're trying to portray the technology in different ways. So any creative pursuit is not limited by rules and guidelines, right? It totally depends on, again, the domain in which you're writing and the function that you're writing for. So the short answer is there's no such guideline, because the the, the, the canvas is very, very huge.
Okay, great, thank you. Sunil asks, both type of writing needs prior product knowledge to present ideas if we consider product and marketing fields. So is there a difference between technology and technical writing for learning and information gathering?
Yeah, so Sunil, so yes, of course, you need prior knowledge before you can write. But then again, what is the depth of the subject matter? So as I explained in one of my earlier slides, right? So as a technical writer, you're just scratching the surface in terms of the features and the functionality. Whereas in terms of technology writer, you're getting to the depth of how it exactly works and how it can possibly be used in different use cases. So the depth really matters. And similarly, the breadth of the audience also matters, because in technical writing, you are addressing the user who wants to use your product. Whereas in technology writing, you are addressing the decision maker, the user, and possibly other personas also.
Puneet, you are talking on.
Yeah, I'm asking, that's all the question in the chat. Anybody has any other question? Looks like we are good. So, Shyam, may I ask a question to audience here?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
So people, I mean, you saw all the slides of Shyam, and yes, he kept technical writing on one side, and then he explained what other kind of aspects are there falling under technology writing. So I would just like to know from all of you, apart from technical writing, we assume that all of you are purely into technical writing, but before joining technical writing field, or even while doing technical writing, any other kind of writing has any of you done which you relate closely to what Shyam has explained? In case you have done, can we get some answers if you have done? Okay, Benila has written blogs. Great. Any other options? Anybody?
Yeah, Puneet, I have done AWS documentation, so I have done a lot of research in AWS.
So Rajdeep has done AWS. Shyam, I think that's somewhere close to technology writing, probably. So I hope so.
Yeah. So AWS is not a, it's not a simple product. It's like a very huge platform. So when you're writing in AWS, you would be covering many aspects in terms of programmability, customization of the platform. So that is more towards technology writing.
Yes, wonderful. So then we have Anupriya, who has written technical blogs. We have Mumtaz, she has written technical blogs. And then we have PPM, I don't know the name. So content writing, creative writing, blogs, bills of materials, Binoy, parts catalog. Sunil has written white papers. Rajshri is into educational documentation. Mahi has a question. Does API docs or SDK docs come under technology writing? Okay. You want to answer
Yeah,
this?
no, it doesn't quite come in the technology writing, because API docs again just tells you, how to use the API, what is the request and the response. So it's a pretty templatized, APIs have their own very strict templates. So again, most of the technical writing is again templatized for the very reason that you would want to have a same consistent look and so it is not technology writing. It is mostly on falling under. It is entirely falling under technical writing.
Yeah. And in the same way, someone who asked about UX writing. Writing is a completely different field. I'm sure you can get those answers if you can ask in our group. Otherwise, on the web also you will get the basic difference. What is UX writing? Just type it there. They have huge number of pages, resources there. It will tell you what exactly is UX writing. How is it different from technical writing? Okay, so if there are no questions, I'm just curious, since Shyam has explained so well what is the all about technology writing. So I can see Anupriya, Mumtaz into technical blogs. Uh, so Sunil into white papers, and I think Shyam has already mentioned in his technology paper presentation also about white papers. So do you guys, I mean, the process that you guys have so far followed in doing that, um, is that something different, or is it what in sync with Shyam has explained? Anybody would like to come forward just to share?
It's very much in sync, Puneet. In fact, in my present company, I am doing documentation on cyber security. So as Shah mentioned, that you need to be curious and you need to go in depth to write something. So I find I find whatever Sham has mentioned. I'm just I find he mentioned the right reasons, the right things to evolve from technical writing to technological writing.
Wonderful. That seems good. Thank you. Shyam, I think we have one question. Is it technology writing almost like authoring a book in technology? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's not really writing a book, but once you start writing on technology over a period of time, you could actually feel that you can assimilate all that into a sort of a book, right? So again, let's say you start writing blogs. So over a period of time, you would see that you have accumulated a lot of blog posts. Some of them may not be relevant with time, but some of them might be like evergreen content, which you can actually package it as a book also. A lot of people do that.
Right. Okay, so I think we
have
have
a few other questions also.
Yeah, we have quite a lot of
questions will
people
come in.
who are experienced, who have some kind of Richa has experience into technology writing, like articles, voice mailers, white paper, PPT marketing. AK, I guess, is Anirudh Kapoor. So since technology writer has a wider work scope, can we say that technology writer is a combination of content writer plus technical writer and proposal writers? That's a question for you, Shyam.
Yeah, so when you bring in the word content in any of the role, so then it becomes a wider scope, right? So in some companies, instead of calling it technology writer, they also say technical content writer, whereas they say technical documentation writer when they mean the traditional technical writing job role, as I explained. So the word content increases the scope, and then again, depending upon marketing content, sales content, developer content, the scope actually expands.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I think that helps a lot. And any other question? Binoy, are the monetary benefits better in technology writing than technical writing? That's the best question.
Yeah. So yes, obviously, as a technology writer, you are working on a more strategic aspects. Marketing and sales is, for most companies, marketing sales is more strategic than documentation and support. So definitely, monetary wise, yes, it opens up a lot of avenues for you. That is one aspect of it. Other thing is, if you're writing on emerging technology, let's say quantum computing or AI, right? So if you really have experience in that, or you have gained some experience in working in any of these technologies or exploring it yourself, then you can definitely command a higher sort of rates compared to a typical technology like cloud hosting and all that, right? So it also depends on how niche the technology, how emerging and the future the technology is. I mean, I could give you one more example, the quantum computing, which is not a mainstream today, because today's quantum computers are very similar to how our classical computers were 50 years back. They used to be housed in a big room. But for you to see a quantum computer in your laptop, it would probably take another, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 years down the line. But then if you're really curious about quantum computing and start exploring today and start writing, maybe by the time quantum computers comes to the forefront, you would be an expert in that, right? So it's a good 4 or 5 year journey for you to build that expertise and build that influence. So yes, the monetary benefits are more, but it comes with more groundwork, right? In terms of understanding the technology and in terms of understanding building or writing.
So I think that answers the second part of his question. Shyam, how do we break into this career? I assume you already covered it, but still.
How do you break into this career? So yeah, so obviously there are two ways to do that. If you're working in a company and the company is giving you an opportunity to break into it, through some internal IJPs or through some internal upskilling, you should probably take it up. And if you don't have any of those avenues available to in your job, then obviously it's like you have to take it like a side passion project and start building your expertise and start writing about it, right? Because it takes 2-3 years to kind of get some visibility from the wider audience. So yeah, these are the only two options out there.
Great. Great. I think overall that's a great insight, and thank you so much, Shyam. I like this a lot, and I'm sure it opens a lot of avenues for those who are trying to do something more apart from the job they are doing. So thank you so much. Swapna, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Puneet.
Swapna, you are on mute in case you're trying to. Yeah.